Welcome to Pizza Quest. I'm Peter Reinhardt. Most of us love and depend on seafood, whether it comes from the oceans, the lakes, or the rivers. But the news on this front is dire and scary. Are we destroying the waters and the species themselves, as so many reports tell us? Are we blowing it? And what can we do about it? Our guests in this episode of Pizza Quest are all on their own quests, not about pizza, but about how to help us understand and appreciate the crisis we're in regarding seafood, and shed some light on what we can all do to respond. Andrew Zimmern is well known to viewers of food and travel on television as the host of Bizarre Foods, as well as What's Eating America and Family Dinner and the Emmy-winning The Zimmern List, and other shows like Field to Fire and Wild Game Kitchen. He is also the executive producer of the PBS series Hope in the Water, which we'll talk about today. Andrew is joined by Barton Seaver, one of the world's leading experts and educators on sustainable seafood, as well as an award-winning chef and the author of 7 seafood-centric books, including Cod and Country, love that title, and The Joy of Seafood. He also hosted In Search of Food on the Ovation Network and heads up Seafood Literary, an online school teaching seafood-specific culinary education. Together with Andrew Zimmern, Barton is the author of the recently published The Blue Food Cookbook. And finally, while her name is not on the cover of this book, Jennifer Bushman's fingerprints are all over this and many other projects related to seafood sustainability. She is the behind-the-scenes glue in this important movement and is a sustainable seafood expert, communicator, and strategist who has been championing ethical aquaculture for more than 2 decades. As the founder and executive director of Fed by Blue, she has been on a mission to transform our food systems, preserve the oceans, nourish the world's ever-growing population, and offset carbon emissions. She also produced and appeared, along with Andrew and Barton, in the 3-part docuseries Hope in the Water. In other words, folks, 3 very busy people are here to share with us their knowledge and wisdom about a very important subject. Thank you, Andrew, Jennifer, and Barton, for joining us here on Pizza Quest.
Thanks for having us.
So, to extend the metaphor, let's just jump in the deep end and talk about Hope in the Water and the Blue Food Cookbook. Jennifer, get us started here. Why is this book so important right now?
The idea for the book really was in tandem with the docuseries. Obviously, I am a big believer in cookbooks. You and I have known each other for a long time. And I was having a conversation with Eric Wolfinger, the amazing photographer, award-winning photographer that was that did the book for us. He had done a number of photo shoots for me and my projects, specifically around aquaculture. And we just felt like it was important for a number of reasons, building out something that was called the Blue Food Cookbook, where we could start to frame a vernacular that had been used with the UN and a number of others, but hadn't really been used broadly with different readers and consumers and cooks. And then the other thing was that we felt like it was really an important anchor for publishers and for writers so that they would have a path to success in writing more about the utilization of fish and seafood and bivalves and sea vegetables, that it would really give that sort of permission, as Barton would say. And when we talked about this, there was absolutely no one that we felt like could have been better champions for this and to write this than Barton and to Andrew. And pretty soon after that, we reached out to them.
Well, the book is beautiful and loaded with fabulous recipes, and Eric and I go back a long way as well because he was one of the first guests we ever had on Pizza Quest 15 years ago when we were doing video. So we know that the team, so to speak, and really appreciate what you're doing. But can any of you sort of address the question of how much of a crisis are we really in regarding the future of seafood?
AZ, you want to take this?
Oh, well, I mean, Peter, we're depending on who you talk to, there's varying levels of existential problems that we face with our natural environment globally. Caring for our water systems, oceans, lakes, rivers, streams, brooks, ponds, is vital to our health as human beings. Every second breath we take on planet Earth is supplied by the water that surrounds all of us. So being able to protect the water and to produce out of it at the same time is really the only way forward for human beings. We have an increasingly hungry planet, a planet that's growing. We got to feed people. Not enough are eating. Right. We're in the midst of a climate crisis, decades old. Rules of engagement with how to manage that, ones that have benefited our planet, that quantifiably benefited it, have been rolled back by the current administration. So I think if you and I were sitting on the couch and you turned to me and said, "Is our circumstances dire?" I would say yes, they are
Yeah.
dire.
That's the fear we have. Yeah.
We are running out of time. I remember 14, 15 years ago, when I sort of first got involved in this kind of work. The year that everybody sort of threw out there was like 2050, 2060. We have until then to sort of fix our problems, and over the course of the last 15 years, that number has staggeringly come down. I've had people on panels whisper to me, it's 2035. I had people last year whisper in my ear, it's 2030. And 6 months later, we saw that we had actually passed certain benchmarks that a decade ago we thought if we passed them, there was no going back in terms of our warming oceans and threats to ecosystems that supply us with blue foods of all kinds, right? So yeah,
Yes.
circumstances are very dire. The good news is that, and it's why I love the docuseries so much, is that there literally is hope in the water. The people who work on and in the water uh have figured out ways in which to backstop some of the many issues that we are facing, and they have solutions. So rather than producing a doom and gloom
Yeah.
sort of documentary series, we created one that's all about solutions. And rather than dwell on the dire circumstances, which obviously we have to mention in the book, to your point, thank you very much for the compliments. We set out to create a reliable piece of information, 100 plus pages that fronts those 145 recipes, and to supply recipes for species that would allow us, if we engaged, consumers and commercial industries and our cultures engaged in them more, would be able to sufficiently help us weather, no pun intended, what is a dire set of circumstances ahead of us.
Well, I think the most important word that I heard in everything you just said, Andrew, is that there is hope. And that's because this is scary stuff. I mean, it's really scary to think that we're destroying the ocean, that it's dying, that it is the whole planet, of course, is scary stuff. But if the hope is in the water, can you give us some examples of where that hope is and how it's going to be, how a different scenario can unfold?
Part of the problem is that so much of both the damage as well as what's going right, it's all hidden from us, right? Even if it's in a pond, which is visible and understandable and within a scope of recognition, seafood and its economies and its impacts on the environment is hidden somewhere else, somewhere beyond the horizon of our attentions all too often. So not only do we not understand the damage, but we don't understand what it looks like when something is going right.
Yeah.
And, that's what I love about the docuseries, which, just to clarify, I did not have a role in that, but am very happy to have supported that through the book. What we're really trying to do is to put a face, to put a place, to put just a concept of, hey, what good food looks like when it comes from the water, right? And to put things into that context allows us to see seafood as reflecting of our own virtues, of our own values, and not just as a problem to be solved, which is kind of how seafood has always been presented. Right? It's bad human bad. Woe is thou, woe is we. Red list, red list, red list. Oceans are going to disappear by 2050. Blah blah blah. Or seafood's going to disappear.
Yeah.
What we haven't had is put it into context of, oh, when this X, put in parentheses, salmon farm, tilapia farm, mackerel fishery, wild capture bluefin tuna, whatever it is, we haven't had just that charismatic imagery to say, oh, this is what it looks like when things go right. I'm comfortable with this. I can see my own virtues and values reflected by this. Oh, and then, by the way, here's a delicious recipe, right? I like, hey, let's take it home and make it dinner. Woohoo! I'm all for that.
Is there enough food, if, all things being equal, let's say, and let's say that we can remove the fear and the crisis moment out of this equation, is there enough food in the ocean to feed this planet?
Well, I mean, 3.2 billion people on the planet already rely on foods from water as some part of their nutrients each and every day. So in essence, the waters are already providing. Nearly a billion are relying on freshwater systems. So we can't forget this isn't just an ocean abundance. There is abundance in the freshwater as well. And aquaculture is something that is increasingly more important. The majority of the seafood that we eat in the United States is farmed. Is it all done responsibly? No. But I think part of the issue around aquaculture, too, is that we allow somehow that narrative of good and bad farmers on land, but we don't allow it on water. And we do have to start talking about the fact that this is an evolving industry and there is a lot of promise. Even in the face of climate change, an article just came out that said that the oysters that we can actually begin in a hatchery, we can have climate change resilient oysters that can go in the water and produce. So Andrew did this phenomenal story in What's Eating America about Apalachicola and how the wild oysters were in decline. But now we have this incredible opportunity where there are farmers there now that are building out very much climate change resilient species. So seaweed, bivalves, finfish, the waters will provide even in the face of climate change, and they are going to be and continue to be, they are a significant and important part of what our future food table looks like.
I think that everything Jennifer said is 100% spot on. I think the one thing that I would add is that, here in America, we're the country that doesn't eat as much seafood as other countries do. The vast majority of the countries in the world actually eat by pound per person per year far more seafood. They are more seafood reliant than we are. We love seafood. We eat it mostly in restaurants. We tend to only eat celebrity species. What Jennifer started to get into was, foods that are blue foods that are lower on the food chain, right? Small silverfish, clams, mussels, oysters, seaweed, etc. Other countries are very familiar with those. We are the ones that are not very familiar with those. We tend to want celebrity seafoods, tuna, salmon, shrimp. Then we can expand that to, some crabs, some halibut, and just kind of keep going out. Please don't put the head on my table. And the same people that are complaining about it love seeing a whole sanma or shishimo, small Japanese silverfish, come to their table in an izakaya and devour it deliciously. So it's getting people familiar with what the blue food system is all about, helping people to incorporate things like seaweed into their diet, eating blue foods more times per week than we already do. Because if we eat seafood, blue foods, more times per week, we will in fact be funding the very people who are taking the best care of our oceans. Are there bad actors? As Jennifer said, of course there are, right? There's bad actors in the wild fishery space. There are good actors in the wild fishery space. There are bad and good actors in the aquaculture space. Increasingly, there are more good actors than bad actors in both spaces, right? And we need to be able to talk about this. And, I think the last thing I would add is communication. Barton talked about being able to communicate something that's recognizable to people. Jennifer alluded to it. Right now there is no consensus in the. I'll just keep it confined to the United States of America. In the American seafood industry, we have too many people talking with too many voices. Without if it was a Venn diagram, it would not be 100% or even 90 or 80 or 70% of overlapping information that's given. I think it was Barton mentioned the red foods, which is a reference to the Monterey Bay Aquarium's seafood watch list. I hope I got that right. It's a mouthful to say, where fish labeled as red are don't eat, yellow is a decent alternative, green is full go. And we have other alphabet agencies that also tell you what to eat and where. But the problem is that there's so much nuance in there.
Yeah.
Was it caught by hand line? Was it pole caught? Is it from an aquaculture system? We just don't know. And so we need to find better ways to communicate to consumers so that everybody is making wise choices. And I think that comes through legislation in this country, quite frankly. I think we need to have the power of laws behind it so that we can give people satisfaction that what's in their markets and in their restaurants has already been vetted for them. I dream of a day where blue foods that are responsibly sourced, that have been well handled, are all that's available on the retail end of the spectrum, that we've taken care of vetting the practices at the commercial end of the stick, as it were.
Well, that's a big wish, and especially with so many different, what's the word, versions. Even like something like the food pyramid. I mean, it can mean so many different things to so many different people, and has been reinterpreted. And so we're dealing with this. Can you help us? You're three experts who we rely on. We trust you guys. Your voices. Can you clarify some of the misconceptions? What are some of the myths that are out there about the seafood crisis, so to speak, and both on the positive and negative side? What are some things that we can clear up for our listeners right now to help them get a handle on where to turn to next?
Just picking up on the cadence of responses here, I think the biggest thing that we need to understand is that seafood sustainability is not a static measurement, and that the ways in which we have understood, let's just say farmed salmon, for example, as conscientious consumers, we need to understand and allow for evolution within an ecosystem as well as within an economic system, such as a farming of finfish. Now, 70 years ago, when the first net pen salmon farms went into the water, we made a lot of mistakes. We are inventing a brand new food system, right? We haven't done that in 10,000 years since we first furrowed the soil and planted the seeds of modern society. We started doing that again 70 years ago. Of course, we got some stuff wrong, but cars were unsafe at any speed 70 years ago, right? A computer the size of the Pentagon can't do what this damn thing does by accident in my back pocket. And yet we hold aquaculture sort of accountable to what was happening 50, 60, 70 years ago.
Are those problems, like you said, that we're getting it right now? Have we straightened out a lot of those issues? Because there was, farmed salmon had a pretty bad, sort of rep for a while.
Yeah. And let's use that just as sort of the poster species of unsustainable seafood, if you will, sort of in the public conscious, that Yeah, we got it wrong. We were, overfeeding them. We were, animal welfare, antibiotics, escapes. I mean, all sorts of things that we have figured out. Why? Well, because consumers and chefs and leaders like ourselves on this call have been demanding it. But also because we've come to recognize that sustainably farming things is actually the more economical benefit, has greater economic benefit to it. So now you have more than, I think it's almost 60% of global farm salmon certified sustainable by one reputable regime or another. And I'm talking about best aquaculture practices or Aquaculture Stewardship Council. Do we have far to go? Yes, absolutely. But that shouldn't paint as guilty those who have done the hard work, who have evolved the systems, who have solved the problems, who have proved the economic models for the entire industry to follow. And that's just salmon, right?
Yeah.
Basically, we farm, I think it's 14 species at any volume, and basically like 35 species are pretty much farmed globally out of the 2,000 plus species that we could be looking at. So that's just, those facts in and of themselves are not important, but so much as they evidence the fact that this is such a new industry. It has so much room to grow that we don't even know which species we're supposed to be growing yet. My God, that's cool to me, right? I mean, at first, I started off as a card-carrying, farmed and dangerous, don't you dare serve farmed salmon. I even went so far as to testify in front of Congress why it should not exist.
Oh, wow.
I rescind my testimonies. I don't rescind the passion and the purpose which led me to those positions, but I have seen the industry evolve before my own very eyes. And now I see that it is an industry that is worthy of the same sort of passionate support as I once vociferously used against it. And I just think that once we see aquaculture in particular, but also legacy fisheries, as areas of radical innovation, opportunity, this starts to get sexy and it starts to become something fun to think about in the food system. Maybe that seafood is not just the problem to be solved, but maybe it is the tool by which we accomplish a lot of other really cool things.
In the docuseries, Hope of the Word, you basically you showcase some of these turnaround operations at some of the places that are making a difference. Can you talk a little bit about some of those and what they're doing?
Yeah, I mean, Andrew will want to chime in on this as well. We actually cast a really wide net when we looked at who was going to be able to be featured in it. We have 9 stories, 3 in each episode, 3 episodes. And we asked all of our friends, family, and beyond, from the largest organizations to the smallest, who they felt like was doing work that was exemplary of what we were going to need for the future.
Yeah.
It wasn't looking at it and saying, oh, already at scale, this farm is now distributing to the Walmarts of the world. It was more to say a Dune Lankard who is farming seaweed, farming kelp in Alaska is doing something that is a scalable model. And Maine is doing the same thing. And there are other countries in the world that are significantly important to seaweed farming. And the estimate is that we will farm more kelp and seaweed in the United States by 2040 than potatoes. So it's like, but how can we do that if we're not aware of those stories? And Fed by Blue's mission and what our funders expect is to deliver science-based stories that are providing hope on the water, that when used as an example, whether I'm an eater or whether I'm a buyer, because we're all consumers at the end of the day, that we can do something if even we just change the way we snack in the afternoon. You can do something about that. And so that's what populated. We had over 3,600 stories submitted. Andrew's Intuitive Content interviewed them. PBS was involved. Stanford University's Blue Food Assessment was involved. They whittled that down. They interviewed over 150 1-hour Zooms with those folks to end up with the 9 that we ended up with.
Can you talk about what those 9 are, Jen? What are some? And so the seafood, the seaweed is something I want to come back to that later because I'm a big seaweed fanatic and have thought for 40 years that there was hope in that area. And I'm wondering where are the stories? Why aren't they happening? And I guess they've been happening, but I just didn't hear them. So you're making them available to us. What are some of the other stories? If you can give us a quick survey of those, say those 9 that you're featuring, and then we'll come back to dive into a couple of them.
One of the ones that's really resonated with people is a program that no one probably understood, which is that the FDA has and the USDA has prioritized, obviously, land-based farmers from moving away from commodity practices and into some sort of farming that's going to be able to be scalable and bring more income and stabilize the farm. What most people don't know is aquaculture, land-based aquaculture, was prioritized. So one of the really incredible stories is about a Minnesota farmer, third generation dairyman, due to factors that were really important to their family, ended up seeing a magazine article about shrimp farming, land-based, ordered 22 above ground pools from Amazon, and then started farming shrimp in the state of Minnesota. Really incredible. We talk about marine protected areas and how important they are to have no-take zones, and we talk about underutilized species, school programs where those underutilized species end up. So it's this incredible way in which a fish pond system, native fish pond system in Hawaii. So it's the way in which we have created this incredibly complicated puzzle that can then build into sustainable and scalable solutions.
Ooh, that's cool. There's a number 2. We got kelp, and we got shrimp farming. Can you give us a couple more examples, and then before we run out of time, maybe we'll just talk about a couple of clear up some other myths, and at least get the ball rolling for people who are listening, because the people who are listening to this, we all take seafood in a sense for granted, and we don't dive into it deeply unless we're in the game. So
Well, Jennifer mentioned a couple of them. There's ancient wisdom of fish ponds in Hawaii, essentially building a wall out into the ocean with
Yeah.
a wooden gate, let the fish in, shut the gate, farm what's inside, right? There is, she talked about the no take zones. We have a wonderful story from the Isle of Arran in Scotland, where essentially scallop dredgers had come in and essentially destroyed the ocean floor. When the ocean floor is gone, there's no food. Fish go elsewhere for food, and so you're essentially looking at an apocalyptic
Yeah, wasteland.
picture underneath the ocean. Well, establish a no take zone there. The ocean is incredibly resilient. When within a matter of years, life is back bigger and better than ever. I would remind everyone listening that there is not a person here who did not see it. I ask this question all the time. I've never had someone come up to me and say, I was not aware of that. That when COVID burst on the scene in March of 2020, there were a lot of horror stories, and we saw them, and of course there should be. But in April and then into May of 2020, we started to see some stories about, look at what's so interesting about what happens when the world stops
Uh-huh.
and humankind lifts its work boot off the throat of Mother Nature. And it wasn't trees growing, it wasn't grass getting greener. It was all of the sediment settling in river systems around the Thames in London, the Seine in Paris, the lagoons in Venice. And you actually could see to the bottom. And what had been just, a place where sea life just did not exist, all of a sudden there were fish and green things growing, and just and an incredible rebounding, because Mother Nature is insanely resilient. So to get back to the point that I think Barton was making before, which I think is what I hope everyone takes away from listening to us, is that this is not so much a problem for all of us to get depressed about. It is an opportunity for incredible innovation. We are sucking the energy out of the soil everywhere that we grow fruits and vegetables on planet Earth. Green economies are going to be shrinking. UNWFP, an agency that I do a lot of work with, came out very publicly a month ago talking about essentially the freshwater bankruptcy that the world is going through. What can replace that is aquaculture, land-based aquaculture, ocean-based aquaculture. Aquaculture is the future that works. And to underline one of Barton's other points, it's not only that salmon farming represents, I think you said 60% of the salmon that's available worldwide. It's that the bad actors were using inefficient systems, and it was to their economic detriment, they found, versus fewer fish per pen actually meant more pounds were taken out of those pens later, right? Changing the feed system and feeding less and doing it with different types of equipment so food wasn't falling through these fish pens actually was beneficial. Fish were eating more fish and were healthier, and on and on and on. Eliminating copper netting, all these things that the industry has learned has resulted in better economics. So now you have more and more bad actors refining their systems because they realize that they're going to make more money. Capitalism works when it comes to aquaculture. I think the big thing that we really I hope comes out of all of this work over the coming years is a diversification of our love for species. We can't continue to hammer the same fish. Barton mentioned 16 fish farmed in sufficient numbers and the potential for so many more. It's that potential for so many more part that really excites me. Because if we can offer more farmed species, prices come down, people will try them. They're delicious fish and shellfish and vegetables, and we will then get people to be eating more seafood. It becomes a virtuous circle. And I look forward to that. I think the innovation in aquaculture is hopefully going to happen quicker. And I hope that the aquaculture systems around the world get the investment that they so desperately need.
What are some of the least appreciated and understood species that we should be looking to help supplement the 16, top of the pyramid species?
This is my favorite thing in the whole world. Bart, go.
Short answer is catch of the day. Bottom line is, if we were to shift our system away from being demand-based, I want cod, give me cod at whatever quality and price you have.
Right.
If instead we said, hey, what's the catch of the day? Turn it to a supply-based system, we would inherently rationalize our relationship with our oceans. And when you walk into the store and your recipe says cod, and this is getting to the book, we wrote it in culinary categories, meaning if the recipe calls for cod, great. Well, cod works, but so does Andrew. You want to do this with me?
Alec, because you do it so well.
Escape, wolf, eel, ray, pout play, stab, flounder, witchback. I mean, we like, right? We could all go on and on. There's all flaky white flesh fish that cook more or less the same. Yes, of course they have nuance. Of course there's subtlety to it. Of course hake is different than cod. But if you're baking it in a spiced tomato sauce, whether it's a shakshuka of monkfish or hake or cod or tilapia or pollock or Asian carp, it really doesn't matter ultimately. What really matters is, did you get a great quality piece of fish that came from either the freezer or the fresh case? Did you use top quality at a price that you can afford with confidence and competence to get seafood on your dinner table tonight?
Yeah. Well,
For that.
either some, I'm looking at the sort of various categories highlighted in the book. So you've got, in addition to like things that you can do with all kinds of seafood, like stocks and broths, you got bivalves, small silverfish, preserved and canned seafood, seaweed and sea vegetables, flaky whitefish, salmon family, meaty dense fish, steak fish, fillet fish, and shellfish and cephalopods. So these are like various categories, nutritionally speaking, just to kind of clear the air on that one. Are there some? Are they all relatively comparable in terms of what they can do for us, protein wise and nutrient wise?
Sure. There's certainly disparities amongst the omega-3 levels that you'll find in seafood, catfish being a very clean, lean, affordable protein, right? Good vitamins and minerals in there. No reason to not eat it.
Yeah.
That's said, it doesn't have high omega levels. Neither does cod necessarily, but we have eaten plenty of that. That's not,
We've left it out.
Bottom line is, let's look at what Americans are actually eating, which is beef, pork, chicken, lamb, veal, turkey, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
When we measure it against that, dang, that catfish or even low omega species look really good as a substitute, if not an outright improvement upon the public health outcomes. And then when we talk about the small silverfish that Andrew was mentioning earlier, we get into the oily fish, those with high omega contents. With that scale of cost-benefit ratio, just goes through the roof in terms of seafood should be on our table 2, if not 3, maybe 4 times a week. That's just bottom line. If you don't remember anything else from us, the 3 S's of public health are don't smoke, wear your seatbelt, and eat seafood.
Eat more seafood. Yeah. Well, this is one of these questions that's always hovering in the seafood world. Like when I go to even to Trader Joe's, you'll see on it, low mercury or mercury free fish. Can you clarify for us, where do things stand with mercury in fish, and what should we be aware of?
I'll take this one too. Bottom line is, we need to decide that seafood is what's for dinner. Are there populations that should be curious about and concerned with mercury?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Bottom line is, they should be. Pregnant and nursing mothers need to be aware of that. But first and foremost, they also need to be aware of, if not principally aware of, the fact that eating seafood is so vitally important to the development of humans in the fetal stage, as well as through the developmental stage and breastfeeding. Children whose moms or whose birth parent eats seafood rich in omega-3s can have on average up to 7.7 IQ points higher, better postpartum outcomes, less anxiety, better weight outcomes, et cetera. And these benefits follow us through life. Those of us on this gathering here today, do we necessarily need to be concerned as much about methylmercury? Not so much, no. Bottom line is, we need omega-3s in there. The species that sort of fall below the cost-benefit line of toxicity being more so than necessary benefit are so few. We're talking about sharks, marlins, very large tunas, tilefish from a very specific area, some barracudas. Like, okay, well, those weren't really on my menu very often anyway. When we look at the vast majority of seafood, it is plainly in the good idea to eat this from a health standpoint.
I would also add, to put people's minds at rest, the fisheries, wild fisheries that are affected by mercury poison, sufficient for us to be concerned as human beings or not eat them, almost never make it to market. In other words, it is one of the things that has happened over the last 30 years in the seafood industry, even globally, is for people, is the testing that goes on, at sea, in wild fisheries. Everybody knows that your business gets shut down forever if a fish that someone shouldn't eat reaches out. Does occasionally someone get very sick from eating something? Yeah, but there's more problems with salmonella poisoning from mishandled chicken than there ever were from a mercury incident with fish. I mean, it's just fish. Barton is very fond of saying this, and I love it, is has to be proven innocent over and over and over again, when in fact the rest of our food systems are so dirty. I get so angry when people are talking to me about, well, aquaculture has these, A, B, and C problems. And I'm like, yeah, it did 20 years ago. Guess what still has problems? Commercial poultry farming in America, right? And by the way, getting worse ever since this administration cleared the way, instead of 2 chickens every second on an inspection line. It's now up to 3 chickens per second.
Wow.
We're having ridiculous arguments with people. Fish should be what is for dinner. Full stop. Full stop.
The other thing I want to say too is that this is a place where technology has really helped us. So we could talk all day long about incredible technology on the boats, unbelievable places where AI is being applied in terms of fisheries, in terms of also in terms of traceability. But one of the things that has happened is micronutrient testing. You can get micronutrient testing on fish and seafood that's going to tell you all the way down to whether or not it's microplastic free. And all of this fish and seafood exists. There are companies like Audacious that are doing micro testing that a lot of the companies that you buy fish and seafood from are using. So if you want that full panel of information from the fish that you buy, it is possible to buy clean seafood. And I have to tell you, we love our fishermen. We love that legacy, but aquaculture is providing that nutritional power punch that you're looking for, and that micronutrient testing is helping build feed models and build regions of the world where it can come from to satisfy any taste.
Well, the series is called Hope in the Water, and you're giving us hope here, and I'm excited about that. It kind of reminds me of the same feeling you get when you read like a Michael Pollan book or a Dan Barber book, and he gives you actual case studies and examples of people that are walking the walk. And it sounds like in the series. By the way, where can people see the series Hope in the Water?
It's available on PBS, PBS Passport if you have it. If you're not a PBS member, you should be. Public media is significantly important and under threat, so please join PBS, become a member of your local station. But it's also available through PBS. The proceeds go to PBS on Amazon, so you can buy the 3 episodes. I think it's $6 for 3 episodes, and you can watch it.
Nice. And so there's one place. Where else can we send people who want to follow up on this and want to get more involved in becoming, let's say, literate when it comes to seafood? But of course, we can send them to the book. Get the book.
Yeah, I'd say send them to their local fish counter too. The person behind the counter might not know all the answers, but at least they showed up this morning and know a little bit more about what's in the case, more so than you necessarily, like you, the consumer. So make a relationship. Start something positive around seafood, because seafood should be what's for dinner.
What about what you're doing, Barton, with the literacy, literary? Seafood
literacy is it's an online culinary course that is aimed at both dedicated and curious home cooks, as well as for professional cooks to really understand seafood as a deep and valuable fluency to have in the culinary world, working with a couple of culinary schools and a couple of large corporations as well. But appreciate the support and pointing people towards the book.
How can they follow up with you in particular? Is there a website that you can send them, that we can send them to hear more about seafood literacy?
Yeah, at seafoodthatmatters.com is my website that I articulate a lot of the projects I've got underway and things in my future. And Andrew?
Well, we made the decision a while back to make sure that at least 25% of our time on Spilled Milk, which is my Substack, is devoted to the issues around food and planetary wellness. And when it comes to food, and those pieces that I'm writing, about 90% of them all have to do with blue foods. I have actually one that I think is going to be a pretty controversial piece that comes out today as we're recording this. But if you go to andrewzimmern.com, you can sign up for my Substack. There's lots of recipes. There's some recipes from the book excerpted along with videos so people can give the book a little test run. I think once you step into the driver's seat on the Blue Food Cookbook, you're going to want to buy it. Tons of information available at andrewzimmern.com.
And then we've got fedbyblue.org. And it gives you our mandate basically is to communicate the importance of responsibly sourced foods from water. So within that, you've got a place where you can find background information and links to be able to get to the PBS series, the cookbook. But maybe one of the most important things is our Seafood Scout. And that Seafood Scout gives you kind of the tools, what questions to ask, and a deeper dive into the journey that you can make when you get to that seafood counter, when you get to that recipe, so that you can be active and engaged seafood eaters.
Wow. Well, that's great. We've got these resources are, great for you to follow, those who are listening, follow up with all and any of these three. Jennifer Bushman at Fed by Blue is the sort of, it almost sounds like an umbrella organization that kind of oversees a lot of this, but each of you individually are doing so much to help promote awareness, interest, and really, I think, we're all committed to the same thing. We want this world to continue, and we want to do what we can to assist to make it more sustainable. And so, we thank you for doing it. We thank you for putting together this book, the Blue Food Cookbook, and everything else that you're doing. We're going to end with one question that I keep, since I have three experts in front of me, and I rarely get a chance to ask this question to somebody who I can count on their answer. Is one of the things that has floated around for years is the idea that wild caught salmon, Pacific salmon in particular, is going to be better for you than Atlantic salmon or farm salmon. Can you just kind of clarify what's the reality there, and how much of it is hype and marketing and how much of it is real?
Well, I don't know if Barton was pointing at me, but I'll jump in. I can tell you that it is really all about where you get your fish from, and frankly, not only what waters, but also what they eat. And so there are farmed salmons that actually nutritionally deliver exactly what a wild salmon will deliver. And that has to do with the microalgae and the feed model that it has and the beautiful waters and practices that they employ. So I would say know your farmer, know your fisherman, and at the end of the day, you will get something that delivers what you expect, as Andrew says, from those celebrity fish. But I think that we've also said that there are a lot of other places and spaces to do it. But the truth of the matter is, best in class farm salmon now delivers what a wild salmon can.
Well, that's a big takeaway because that's something that is unclear to a lot of people. So thank you. Anyone else want to final comments before we?
Well, I would just add, because you brought it up and I hear it all the time. People are always referring to Atlantic salmon. Atlantic salmon is very rarely seen in American markets. I mean, it's wild. It just is something that, yes, we see it over in Europe, and obviously, and I've enjoyed wild salmon from responsibly managed fisheries. The last time that I was in Ireland, actually, but we just don't see it that often here. I have never seen wild Atlantic salmon. Well, sorry, not in the last decade in any of the markets here in Minnesota. So just to clarify that point, everybody seems to be comparing wild Pacific salmon and holding it up as some sort of iconic superfood. And I just would underscore Jennifer's point. Well farmed salmon is identical.
Well, and that's really helpful, and I want to thank you for that. And again, I want to thank all of the three of you for all that you're doing, and for the education and the knowledge that you're sharing with the world, and for your passion for what you're doing. So, Andrew Zimmern, Barton Seaver, Jennifer Bushman, thank you so much for being here today on Pizza Quest. I look forward to staying in touch with you, and again, sending more people to you. And we'll look forward to any other projects that any of you want to mention coming up that we should be on the lookout for, in addition to Hope on the Water and this book, Fed by Blue, or the Blue Food Cookbook. Fed by Blue is Jennifer's organization. What do you see?
I'd say watch for some big announcements coming in May, because we do have some great things coming up.
That's what I'm looking for.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you again for being here with us today on Pizza Quest. Thank all of you for joining us. We'll see you on the next episode. Welcome back to Pizza Quest.